Hello and welcome to the May 19th, 2026 Town of Penfield Transportation Committee meeting. I will now call the meeting to order. If folks have had a chance to review the April 21st minutes, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any corrections or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, they are approved. Next, we're going to have a presentation from Colliers. It's an update on the active transportation plan.
Want me to dive right into it? Okay. Perfect.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I'm Tom Robinson. I'm from Colliers Engineering and Design. We're working with the town on the Penfield Active Transportation Plan. And I think it's probably the third time I've been with this group. And we're kind of in the final stages now, so it's exciting stuff. And I'll try to put it all together concisely and cover a lot of material in the next 20 minutes or so. We'll look at where we are on the project schedule. We have submitted the draft plan to the town for their review, so I can give you an overview of everything that's contained within that document, and then we'll allow some time for questions and answers, general discussion at the end. So we kicked off in April of 2025. Been working on this for a little over a year, which is just slightly beyond where we thought we were going to be, but more or less on schedule and getting ready to wrap things up, so it's very exciting. Looking at the public engagement process, which was one of our big goals, was to connect to the public, get their views on walking and bicycling in the town of Penfield. We had a project advisory committee, which was this group, 4 meetings with town staff. We had a series of small stakeholder focus groups. We talked to New York State DOT, Monroe County DOT, the school district, and some advocacy organizations. In 2025, we had a pop-up meeting at the Independence Day celebration, which was great, just kind of talking to folks and getting their feedback. We had a community kickoff meeting, which was an open house work session. A big part of this was our online engagement survey, which will cover some of the results of that, but we got a lot of feedback from the public through that conduit. And then we had a community open house as well at the community center, which brought in a lot of folks, and that was really good conversations as well. So we feel like we heard from a lot of people. All kinds of Penfield residents, all different ages, all different concerns regarding safety and active transportation, and we tried to weave all those things into the report. So the online survey, we had almost 700 responses, which was great. There was 31 questions in the survey. Some of the key takeaways there was the top destinations that people want to be able to walk and ride to safely, some of the most desired improvement types, which included sidewalk connectivity, filling in the gaps, and off-road trails. We asked a question, if you could only make one investment, what would it be? And the overwhelming response was new off-street trails. So there's a lot of things that we can do, but that was certainly getting a lot of attention, and we tried to incorporate that emphasis into the report. We heard a lot about pedestrian and walking frequency and how much people do walk now, and that there's a demand for us to try to increase safety and connectivity to make more walking destinations accessible to people. We looked at existing conditions. We did go back to the 2008 bicycle master plan that Penfield did, and we kind of built up from there to see what had changed. In some cases, what had not changed. We looked at land use and zoning, a lot of different data on the roadways, including the roadway jurisdictions, the traffic volumes, the crash analysis going back 10 years, existing sidewalks and trails, and some data from other groups on bicycle rideability around the town. We looked at connectivity to the community destinations that were identified in the online survey, and then we did some in-depth analysis of particular intersections that the town pointed us to sort of as prototypes. Not that we're looking at every intersection, but we wanted to look at some different jurisdictions, different locations around the town, and different intersection geometry, just to see what we could suggest for future improvements. Some of that we did with placing our own digital cameras to collect camera data and actually see what was happening, what the compliance was, were there any problems, and how people were moving through the intersections. So that was very informative and helped us fuel our recommendations. So the recommendations are really based on the merger of that public input that we heard from the residents and then all the data analysis we've got through the inventory of existing conditions. So we put our recommendations really into three main buckets: on-road improvements, and in that case we're including the sidewalks with the roadway; off-road improvements, which are new trails and connectivity with multi-use pathways; and then programs and policies, which is a really pretty big bucket. So that's everything from maintenance requirements and programs to existing land use policies, enforcement, safety and education. So the kind of the non-physical things that go with the infrastructure to make a bike and pet-friendly community. So all those things got to work together. We recognize that to make it accessible and connected for bikes and peds, it's more than just the infrastructure. We have to do that, but we have to develop these other things in support. So a quick look at some of the on-road improvements that are recommended. There's a whole big toolbox that we look at. But what we're doing now is we're really trying to focus on improvements that preferably they're already happened in Monroe County. And if not Monroe County, we'd like to see that they've been applied or implemented in New York State. There's great things happening all over the world, and we pay attention to that. But we like to look at what's at our fingertips now that we can just really probably move forward quicker and easier working with the jurisdictional agencies. So traffic calming, different kinds of lane reductions, certainly closing the sidewalk gaps was a big priority. Penfield has a really strong sidewalk program, so we tried to capitalize on that and move that forward. In general, what we're trying to do is make the best of the facilities and the infrastructure and the resources that we have now. So that's going to be most cost-effective and easiest to move forward. So that's where we start. And we came up with some location-specific ideas of where these things could happen in the town. So the sidewalk gaps, we talked with Mark and the town staff about the program, what they have put in the ground recently, the gaps that we're aware of, and then we listened a lot to the resident input that we got through the public engagement and came up with kind of a short list of where some of the highest priority gaps would be and try to move those forward in the near future. So conditions for bicyclists, in the best possible world, we would have bicycles separated from vehicle traffic. In some cases, that's just not feasible. We don't have the space. So we work with what we have. One thing Penfield does have going for it is a lot of the shoulders on the roads are very wide. So we're thinking if we can just make the protection of that shoulder space a little bit better, we'll probably get some mode shift, some increasing number of people will feel comfortable riding on the road if the shoulder's a little better protected. So we looked at examples of different ways to do that. And there's this whole spectrum of edge protection, which could be, a single edge stripe to wider painted buffer to something physical. So we kind of looked at all of those. That image on the screen is from a recent DOT project along Brighton-Henrietta Town Line Road. They did a road diet, they had the space, so they went with the widened painted buffer and an actual delineated bicycle line, which is kind of a new thing for Monroe County DOT. So here's an image of a specific spot in Penfield. You'll see the existing conditions down in the lower left-hand corner. This is along Atlantic Ave, kind of, what do I want to say? It's west of Scribner, so kind of between Scribner and Clark Road. So we just use this as a prototype. And some or all of these things could happen as conditions allow on different roadways in the town. But you'll see some of the things that we suggest that are fairly low-hanging fruit is, in this case, there is a sidewalk. And we throw out the possibility that if you simply double up the pour of the concrete and make a 10-foot wide walkway, you now have an AASHTO-compliant multi-use path. So it's a little easier for bicyclists and pedestrians to coexist in that kind of space. The reason we picked this location for a widened sidewalk is there's very minimal driveway and curb cuts. So there's not those conflicts of cars pulling in and out. And this is also getting close to Shadow Pines. So there's sort of increasing interest in traffic as that comes online. We also do show the buffered edge protection to the existing shoulder. In this case, we have a painted buffer and a rumble strip, which are all like acceptable measures for county and state DOT. So we're just kind of putting it together according to the specific conditions of that location and make a more multimodal, active transportation friendly environment. So it looks like a very pretty picture, it is, but it's all feasible measures that could be applied if we go through the process. The term bicycle boulevards, also family-friendly roads, is where you look at existing neighborhood streets that are low speed and low traffic, and can those be alternatives to riding on the really busy, high-traffic roads. So we mapped out some of those. This is information, and we collaborated with Reconnect Rochester to help create this map, and where some of those things might just give better options for people to walk and ride. I mentioned the digital cameras that we placed before. We did those at a few intersections and a couple of school zone crossings as well. So we got data from the Scribner Road school crossing. We are suggesting actually that one gets relocated, so it's more in alignment with some of the new houses along Shady Rock Lane. It becomes perpendicular across the road, which is a little bit safer. So these are minor improvements, but feasible and meaningful. So a lot of attention was paid to school zones and bicycling and riding. And again, if we can get a little bit of mode shift, maybe a few more kids get back and forth that way, and it's a few less parent pickups, and everybody's better with the just incrementally improved environment there. We wanted to look at some roads that were under town jurisdiction, so we chose this one to take a quick look at, and came up with some just suggestions for realigned and better marked crosswalks. Our camera data showed, for example, in this intersection, people were just sort of crossing wherever and whenever they could. Not that there's a ton of traffic out here, but there's things we can do to make it safer and more orderly. This is an image of the crossing school zone, 5 Mile Line Road at Liberty Street. We suggest a kind of a suite of improvements here. A raised crosswalk is something that does occur in Monroe County. You have to be careful how they're constructed, look at the drainage, make sure your snow plows are okay with it. But We see them applied, they've been out there for a number of years, and there's certain conditions, and this is one where we just have a lot of school-generated traffic, so we want to do everything we can to make that crossing as safe as possible. And we talk about some of those improvements and give you a visual of what that would entail. So the next bucket is the off-road improvements. We created this overall sort of oblique aerial view of Penfield, and it's an illustration of how the off-road system and on-road system can work together. So trails are great for recreation, they're great for fitness, they're great to get out in nature, but they can also be functional transportation to get you from point A to point B. So we kind of looked at the overall system and then pieces that we could zoom in on that are especially attractive and highly feasible. So that's the overall picture. And then the next one is kind of, we're zooming in, we're looking at what the report refers to as the Community Connector Trail, which is basically, Shadow Pines is down in the lower left. And then this complex, the Town Hall Complex, Veterans Memorial Park, is in the upper right. And there's a very strong opportunity to allow people to move from that point to that point, off-road, not exposed to traffic, on a safe multi-use trail that would be also ADA accessible the whole way. One reason this is very interesting for Penfield is there's a limited number of landowners and land managers that we would have to deal with, and we made initial contact with several of the major ones as part of the study. Nothing is committed to, but everyone is supportive of the idea. So that kind of raises the attractiveness of this concept, and we're recommending that the town look at some possible grant applications to move to the next steps. It's actually really exciting because it connects parks, nature preserves, town facilities, and schools. We referred to some earlier studies. So this was one that the GTC did. It was just called the Irondequoit Creek Trail. Interestingly enough, some of this has been completed. So the town between kind of Linear Park, Philbrook Park, and all the way to Spring Lake Park and Parrington, you guys have done that. So there's something to build from there, and it's sort of meeting up with pieces that have also been studied by different organizations over time. So we're just trying to point to what seems feasible to move to the next level. The camera data told us a couple things. We're back to 5 Mile Line Road here, but we realized from the movement we saw on the cameras at that crossing we looked at earlier that people were finding a sort of a backdoor shortcut up to the schools. So we think that that is probably another opportunity to just do a more formal, organized pathway based on what we're seeing of where people want to go. The space on 5 Mile Line Road is very limited. There's just not a lot of extra things we can do there to make bicycling and walking safe. But if we did a trail like this, we could provide that, ADA compliant, AASHTO compliant, multi-use pathway. And then the third bucket is the programs and policies. We paid a lot of attention to this as well. We looked at the existing land use regulations that the town has, made some recommendations for future improvements. We paid a lot of attention to what everybody calls the 3 E's, which are education, engineering, and enforcement, the things that really have to work together to make all of this work. That's discussed in the plan as well. Implementation, we have a list of follow-on activities. So this is just a short list of things that we can move forward with immediately upon the conclusion of this plan. We did give sort of a cost estimate toolbox, so you can generate, as these things move forward, what the budget level type of estimate. And then we talked about funding sources. So federal, New York State grants that can help move these things towards implementation. In a nutshell, that's about a year of work in a 100-page document. So there's a lot more detail in there. I know we're going to get it up onto the town website really soon, so everybody can look at the draft report. But it's exciting. We're glad to see that there's a lot of things that we can do and can certainly move forward in the near future.
Great.
Any questions for all of that?
Well, thank you for that presentation. It was very thorough for having a 100-page document, putting in what you could. I think I'm really excited for us to move forward with potential grants to start this getting forward once we have it approved.
Yeah, I think some of the projects that are outlined here would be very good competitive contenders for some of the grant programs that we know about.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I just know Tom will be back on with the town board tomorrow night, so give the board a brief update on that. And then I think early June, we're scheduling a public input session. So if anybody's watching at home, I think after this meeting, we'll make the document available online, and then the public can look at that. And if they've got any final comments on it, we'll put it out there and then collect the public's input through email to engineer it, penfieldny.gov, more on the website as well. So just wanted to share that.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, we're going to continue discussion. Next, we will go to Guygrace Lane and Yorktown Drive with a speeding concern.
Absolutely. So let me pull up the map for you guys. So we received a concern from a resident about speeding on Guygrace Lane. And I think also he had concerns about speeding on Yorktown Drive. So we looked at both of those locations. Guygrace Lane, we had actually received a similar complaint about speeding back in 2022. And at that time, a traffic data study was done, so picked up the speed and volumes. And I believe at that time, the consensus was that educational measures would be best implemented here. And that since it's not a cut-through street, that it most likely would be just local residents who would be mostly driving through this area. So based on that, we also looked at our new and improved traffic data, I guess you could call it a portal. So the town recently approved the using Urban SDK, which is basically a data, it collects data from cell phones, GPS units, Sirius XM radio, and is able to aggregate this data and then give us almost real-time data. I think the delay is about a week. So I pulled the data from Guygrace Lane just from April. So you can see here, it shows you, this is showing average speed, but you can pull 85th percentile speed, you can pull AADT, everything like that. So I did pull the data for Guygrace Lane for last month. And let's see if I can replicate that here in front of you all. So Guygrace Lane is posted at 25 miles an hour speed limit. And looking at all these different segments of Guygrace Lane, we saw an 80th percentile speed. There was a little bit of a range, but I believe all of them were under the speed limit, and I believe the highest...
That was the section in particular that the resident
Yeah, the section...
who lived in was the small section.
Oh, the small section piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this is here. Yes, so here in this section, it's telling us that for the month of April 2026, the 85th percentile speed was 24 miles an hour. So based on the committee's response from back in 2022 and looking at this, data here, I would recommend that the same measures be taken. So it would be educational measures in this scenario. We can always put out the speed cart to remind residents, as they're going along, how fast they're going. But in general, at this time, it seems like that's the best action to take. I don't know if anyone has anything else to
I
add.
just want to share this is new software as of yesterday that we have.
Yes.
But it has, if you click on trends down below, hopefully at some point it can tell you day of the week, it's the peak time, period of the day. So this, you can go back, I think 13 months right now is what we have. So it's, again, a week delayed. So this is traffic data from as of a week ago today is what they have in the system. So this is a great advance for us. Before, as this group knows, we had 2 traffic counters, and we'd put the tubes out and be responsive as we'll go out and put the counters out, come back next month. We've done, whatever we can do with that. With this new software here, they've got that kind of almost real-time data on every street in town. So thank you to the town board for, supporting this. But I think going forward, this will be a great, asset to the committee as well as the town to look at that. And then you can do sorts on streets. There's different filters on it, so you can look at, which streets are seeing 10+ mile an hour speeds, what time of day are they, and, then that's stuff that, we can share with the sheriff's office going, well, based on this, it looks like Tuesdays at, whatever period 1, there's the average is up to 32. So I don't know what's going on with Tuesdays in that time period, but the rest of them look normal and there's something going on that time, so that, can help us with some targeted enforcement if that's needed. But it also helps us if, 1, not having staff out into roads putting counters out there, but 2, now we've got data on all roads in Penfield, county, town, state, so it's, quite an addition for us to have that data and stuff to share, but as I came as of yesterday, so we're kind of learning it as well.
What's in the data sample for this? Like how many vehicles?
So go to ADT.
Oh, you're asking how many vehicles, like volume-wise?
Yeah. The sample size. Okay.
So 300. So again, obviously this is not every car out there. There could be people that don't, but if you have a cell phone in your car, if you've got XM radio, if you've got any sort of thing in your car, supposedly they can track it. So obviously if you've got an older car that has nothing in it, you don't have a cell phone, for those out there, it doesn't track whose car it is, it doesn't tell us whose cell phone it is, but they're pulling that data and using this proprietary software to pull it together. So it's so the volume piece, we'll have to look at that and see how that translates to other locations. And I think as we get into the software, we can look at what we've known for counts the county does by older measures and the state does, and say, okay, are we capturing most of that volume data? Are we 80% or 90%, or how does that translate? But thus far, I say we've kind of started looking at it for speeds on roads. In that area is kind of what we deal with most. But
Can you look at the raw data too?
Like each
All
individual?
380,
I don't believe so.
no, I think they just compile it and give it to us in a.
Yeah. I
And then
believe
right
it's
now, we say we've
aggregated.
got 13 months back. They said we can get more in the past if we need it, want it, from them. There, it's got the peak period time. So the overnight, the 12 a.m. to 3:59 a.m. It was that one time period, but yeah, you can see, so we can go back to April of 2025 is as far back as we can go right now, but you can check all the months. We've got, where normally we don't do counts in the wintertime because you can't tape the tubes down to the road. Now we've got January, February, counts year round. So we don't know all the stuff, and all the stuff, we're going through some training sessions ourselves, showing how to use it, but even just the filter sorts. The other day I just said, show me every street that the average, or the 85th is over 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. Highlights them all and just shows through town, here's the ones that, average above that.
And we can produce reports out of it with whichever bits of data we're looking for as well.
Okay, was there any more discussion on any of that? Questions?
How did this data compare to the previous data from 02, or 22 rather?
Yeah, good question. So I believe let me pull up the data so I'm not telling you the wrong thing. It was fairly similar.
I don't think so. Nothing's changed, right? I mean,
Okay, so 2022.
it's saying.
So the ADT then was 295 was what we measured. I believe the tube counters were out for about a week in June of 2022. So yeah, I picked up an ADT of 295, whereas this 2026 data that we're getting from the software, I think we saw 380 AADT. So, and then for 85th percentile speed, in 2022 we had 29 miles an hour, whereas now we're getting 24.
Can you pull up the map? I don't remember where Simone Terrace is, because I want to see where exactly it was placed.
Yes.
That's the north side street.
So this is just the entire stretch
Yeah, that's
of
Simone
Guygrace
Terrace.
Lane.
So.
And I
it was
believe that
It was
the,
between Jewelberry and Simone, so I would think that it was in a different location than what you're actually checking right now as well.
Jewelry and Simone.
Could've been
Like,
that
what do
piece
you mean
in there.
here?
So that would be the segment that it was in.
Oh,
I think
I'm
when
also
the-
telling you because I think it did it.
Okay.
So you would you're more likely in that segment to get a higher speed than around those curves.
yeah, that's
So it's
true.
not surprising that that's slightly higher. It's still not vastly higher. It's not a concerning number compared to what you would expect in an area like that. And you're right, your previous statement is right, that generally we would expect those to be residents in that neighborhood that are driving through that.
I think you have the right approach.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I agree with my background, I'd agree with education.
All right.
So if the committee is supportive of that, we can move forward with that.
So is this replacing the counters, or this is in addition to the counters?
It's a good question.
This is hopefully replacing the counters.
Yeah.
So we had originally money in our budget to change from, the state's been using more pole-mounted radar units instead of the tube counters. So we had gone through the budget season last year with the town board to buy those. And then this group reached out to us. We did some due diligence. We checked, other companies, got quotes and said, hey, we can transition and, use this in lieu of buying the counters. So right now we've got a 1-year subscription. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully it goes well. Money well spent, and then, we'll have to budget for it, next year to keep up with the software. If it doesn't work for us, we could go back and, buy counter units, but I'm hopeful that, we're done with that and this has kind of replaced that. But we kind of want to use this as a pilot year to check it out and see how it works.
Yeah, it's a nice application. I just wish you can get down into the aggregate data.
And maybe you can. I mean, yesterday was our first training session in the morning, so that's, as we get into it further, maybe that's the spot we can get to, or we can pull more out of it.
We tend to have more confidence in the speed data than the volume, because I'm not sure we might be double counting some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Some kid goes down there with all kinds of equipment, he gets counted 3 times.
Yeah, and I think
Bob and I go down, we don't count.
I think if we get into a traffic study for a new development, you're back to
You wouldn't use
manual counting and everything else. This just gives us, I think, relative data, and at least we've got
Still
a benchmark to start from. If you're doing a new development, new construction, then you'd have a traffic consultant go out there and actually do counts to make sure we're not double counting or pulling anything else in.
All right.
So before we move on, I believe that the resident also was concerned about speeding on Yorktown.
I think they
Perhaps
said
you could speak to
their
that.
stretch, they were in the middle there, that they felt that they were kind of a cut through to get over to Baytown, and Yorktown was part of that.
Okay.
So I think particularly the concern was on their section of the road.
Okay.
They felt that while it's not a cut-through for Hatch and around, it's kind of the main flow for, neighborhood traffic through there. So I think that was their reference to a cut-through was, people that live up in Guygrace and Jewelbury wanting to get over to Baytown Plaza to, Empire Boulevard. That was kind of their main way. Guygrace, Anthony, Yorktown, or down to Plank, that, they just thought that they had some extra traffic and some extra speeds just due to kind of internal cut-through. So
Okay.
I think that was their focus, was more on Guygrace, but just said, that Yorktown connection was part of their concern.
Great, okay, then continue.
All right. So are we ready to move on? The next is a speeding concern on Whalen Road in the vicinity of 1266 Whalen.
Yes. So we had a resident come in with concerns about speeding on Whalen Road. This is, so Whalen Road is mostly a county road. There's a piece that is town-owned. So it's east of 250 to Dublin is town-owned. So this resident's concern was that drivers are speeding on this curve. She said she's noticed that the, chevron sign that indicates a turn has been down several times in the past few years. So, yeah, in this location here. So she was concerned about speeding. We didn't have any very recent data on Whalen Road from our tube counters, so I did do a preliminary analysis using the new Urban SDK data. I will emphasize that it's very preliminary just because we just gained access to this information. But I will pull up the data on that. So the speed limit here is 35 miles an hour. For the month of April 2026, we had an ADT of 1,000 and an 85th percentile speed of 40 miles an hour. I did also pull up any accidents that occurred in the last 3 years using the Clear accident data portal. I did see a couple accidents. Several of them had to do with icy conditions on the road, which, they could have been speeding. They could have been doing the speed limit and still slipped off the road. So at this time, again, using our traffic calming analysis, only educational measures were recommended at this time. I would say the speed cart would be a good option here. And then additionally, I think it might be a good idea to look a little bit closer at the signage that's here indicating a turn and just make sure that it's adequate, that, it's up to spec, it's the right size, there's enough of them, that kind of thing. So that would be my recommendation, is that we would perform a study on the signage. Anybody have any questions, thoughts?
Is the feedback cart up and operational?
It can be. We haven't got it out yet for the season, but I'm sure it's just charging the batteries and we can have it out there.
Okay, just as we're starting to make a list of spots and everything else,
Yeah.
and start to get stuff
Yeah.
for the season. Okay.
Other questions or comments regarding that?
Was there any, when you looked at those accidents, were they nighttime or daytime?
It's a good question. I actually didn't look that closely. Yeah.
Because that would, I don't see any streetlights, so the reflectivity on those chevrons could be.
They look a little bit older signs. That's
So
what
if you have them at
would be.
nighttime and you have no lights and the reflectivity of those,
Yeah.
then that would be something. However, if they're daytime, then it looks like you can see 3 of them at once, but never make decisions off of Google Maps.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. As part of our follow-up on this, I'll make
Yep.
sure to look at the time of day on those accidents. Okay. Any other questions? move forward with the speed cart and the sign study? I'm seeing nods.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Sounds good.
All right. Next, we'll move on to Penfield Gardens neighborhood signage evaluation with Sarah.
Yep. So we previously had two concerns within the Penfield Gardens neighborhood. One was Brentwood and Wilhurst, and one was Kenmont and Henderson. Thank you. And that resulted in recommendations. And because of that, we felt it would be appropriate to move forward with an analysis of the signage within the neighborhood for the intersections to make sure that they're matching as appropriately as possible, and if it's necessary to make any changes. Just because we feel it's appropriate to keep the whole neighborhood in consideration. With that, we just wanted to bring that to this committee and ensure there was support before we move forward with it. I'm
Yes.
seeing nods.
Yes.
Yes.
So with that, that will be our next step that we take.
All right. Anything else regarding that?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, so next we had a traffic concern under another jurisdiction. It was a resident request for permanent speed feedback signs in the vicinity of 2016 Penfield Road.
Yeah, so this is, again, something falls under another jurisdiction, so we'll make sure we pass that on to the state DOT for their consideration and, have them take a look at that and see if they would consider it if it's warranted. But as we've done in the past, just want to share with the committee and as well as residents at home that we do hear comments, concerns. While it may not fall under the town of Penfield, it may fall under the state or the county. Again, just put it to the committee to share that it was received. We'll make sure we pass it along duly to what other agency jurisdiction it falls under, and then let them take it from there. So this is, again, just kind of an FYI for the committee that we're passing on those concerns.
All right, thank you, Mark. Okay, next we have a held item, Canterbury Trail and Chatworth Circle South stop sign request.
So we're still holding on this item. We're waiting for the foliage to come in before we do a site distance study. I'd say we're probably pretty close, so hopefully that will be completed soon.
All right, great. Thank you. Under new business, I had one thing that I wanted to bring up. I was speaking with legislator Paul Dondorfer at one point, and that conversation led to him putting in a request to lower the speed limit on 5 Mile Line near the schools. And the request was denied by the Monroe County Department of Transportation. And one of the things that they mentioned was that they were again recommending that the town have crossing guards, particularly at the intersection with Gebhardt Road. And so hearing that, I am looking into ways to get a crossing guard there. I'm possibly using existing employees because it's nearly impossible to hire crossing guards. It's a short amount of time in the morning and a short amount of time in the afternoon, and we have had difficulty with that in the past. And I would like to put out there that if anyone knows anyone who might be interested in being a crossing guard, we would love to entertain that idea. Because it's definitely something that would benefit the community. There's been call for that from residents. So, hopefully we might get some people who are interested. So that was that. And then I just wanted to share that we are going to be losing one of the members of our committee. Now, Mary Sweeney has lived in Penfield for 48 years, and 25 of those years you have served on this committee.
I have.
Well, thank you for your service. We really appreciate it. And I know that Mark wants to say a few things.
Yeah, been with the town 22 years, and you've been on the committee longer than I've been with the town. So just wanted to thank you for your years of service. As all the rest of the committee members, this is a volunteer job. You're not getting paid for it. You're just here trying to, do better in your community, hear the residents, have a public aspect of it. We hear on the engineering side and the town side all the time, but it's very important to have, other residents on the committee that, can respond and hear from your own neighbors, as well as from the community. It's not just the engineering department saying yes, no, maybe. It's truly a resident committee, and so wanted to echo the supervisor's comments and thank you for your years of service. Hopefully you'll stay in touch. Hopefully you don't forget about us. If you want to show up on a Tuesday evening and you got nothing else going on, please stop by. But again, thank you for your years of service, and hopefully you're not leaving Penfield, but just maybe just
I'm
stepping back from the committee.
No, just stepping back. But thank you all. I've really enjoyed being on this committee. When I joined, I think I was the only female on the committee. So it was guys, that were talking, and I thought, what are they talking about, But over a period of time, I just fit right in, and then I think one of the female secretaries joined, and so there were two of us at that point. But I saw the notice in the newspaper, and I thought, well, this is a chance. I was retiring from Kodak, and also starting a new career with Empire State College, where I was a professor. So I thought, well, this is a great time for me to really serve my community. And like you said, I've lived in Penfield almost 50 years, really. And so, and I lived more on the Webster side, so I knew nothing about the Penfield side. So I learned not only things about the committee, but about the town. So I would recommend to anyone who's thinking about trying to do something in the town to take advantage and do that, because it's really rewarding. I mean, I've met, I worked with engineers at Kodak, so I worked with the engineers here, and then the DOT, and then Linda has been so helpful to me, because I've had connection problems with the internet, so we have this thing, we send each other text, because I can't access, I can read the notes from Penfield, but I can't respond because they get locked into my computer. So, but thanks, Linda, for doing that. I really appreciate that. I'll miss this committee, but I'm not planning to do really anything. I'm just backing off of
Well,
a
then
few
feel free
things.
to give us any information
I will.
as you're driving around town.
I'll do that. And thanks for my beautiful flowers. I love flowers, and the card from everyone. But thanks. I'll miss you.
We'll miss you.
We'll miss you too.
And I understand that if we have a June meeting, chances are you will be here for that.
Probably, yeah.
Yep, and
I'll
then
be here.
we just wanted to make sure that in case it got canceled, that we
That's
recognized
right.
you.
You're right.
So,
Thanks. I appreciate that.
All right.
I'll be here.
all right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, did anyone have anything else that they wanted to talk about? All right, our next meeting will be June 16th, and I will adjourn this meeting at 5:48.